Alright, so I'm a little bit later in the game here. This is a Mavic Pro Platinum that I got in from a customer. He said that he had crashed it, and the gimbal he thought was broken. And as soon as I got this drone in, I quickly realized once I turned on the battery that the gimbal started smoking. I don't know if it's possible to see in there or not, but that's kind of where it started smoking at. And then looks like the customer tried to do some repairs himself because he also pinched the video cable in there. I don't know if you can see that very well or not. It's right in there. So he pinched that. And so that made this gimbal junk for the smoking. Had he pinched just the video cable, that would have been replaceable, but it was smoking. So I believe what he did was he tried doing the repair himself, and then when he put stuff back together, he smashed the ribbon cable, and that's what started to make it smoke. So that's where I'm at now. I had already taken it apart. I had to get a new camera, so I'm going to start by just feeding this in there. Doing the whole gimbal assembly isn't bad at all to do. It's when you have to rerun a whole new ribbon cable, because most of the ribbon cables out there are non-DJI ones. And so what that means is that you could get a ribbon cable from, say, Amazon or something like that, and you could still think that you have the exact same problem because the gimbal is still freaking out or something like that is still going on, and that's not the case. So a lot of people condemn the whole camera after they do a ribbon cable because they bought a junk ribbon cable to do in the first place. I do them. It does not make a whole lot of sense to have me run a ribbon cable, just because the expense to run something like that is, it gets more labor intensive. And so a lot of times it just makes sense to run a whole new gimbal. Maybe, if you can find a good used one off eBay or something like that. You do have protection on Amazon for stuff against that. It might not be working or something like that. But, I don't know, that's a lot of work to do for a ribbon cable. A lot of corners, stuff like that. So anyway, so just doing 4 screws here. These are the 4 main screws that hold on the gimbal. All right, this is supposed to be a crosshead Phillips screw, but again, I believe the customer took it out, and this is kind of what ended up in there. The rest are these Phillips screws here. That's what's supposed to be in there. So it doesn't really matter if it's an Allen head in there or not. It just shows me that he did take it apart. Anyway, so then you want to make sure your connector ran up correctly there. This is going to be your power and ground for the gimbal, right there. And then, when you're doing this, you always want to make sure that you use a non-magnetic screwdriver if you are going to be doing anything in here. A magnetic screwdriver can really mess with the electronics. These 2 ribbon cables here, right here and right here, are for the gimbal. And then these 2 up front here are for the front vision sensors. I don't know if that makes it easier to see or not, but we'll see. There we go. And so when you push these on, you just got to make sure that you are lined up, because if you're not, obviously you can crush the connectors, yada yada. So there's some stuff that you want to be very, very careful of, because then you're just going to end up replacing more parts, and nobody wants to do that. So originally, DJI does put a silicone on here that you'll have to kind of coerce off. You have to kind of cut it, and so that you can get the ribbon cables up. Never just try and pry the ribbon cable up, obviously, because you're going to rip the ribbon cable. And again, those 2 are for the front vision sensors. So always use a non-magnetic screwdriver for pushing stuff down. And then if you are going to be working with a lot of intricate parts, this tool, I usually put this on when I'm going to be working with the compass. This deal here, what this does is it grounds me out so that I cannot ruin any electronic pieces. So I just ground it out to my desk, and then basically I can't create any static electricity. So everything that goes from me is not going to ruin the circuit board. So it's always really, really good to have one of these while you're working, especially with electronics. You don't obviously want to ruin your. So that's these caps. These can only go on one side now. So be sure when you're taking them off or when you're putting them back on, you're lining them up, because they can only go on one way. And so you can break them off if you try and just jam them in there. So as you can see there, they're lined up. They kind of fit like a puzzle piece. It's not too crazy to figure it out. But this is where these smaller screws come in. So you'll see a size difference between the screws in the shaft size there. So these are a lot smaller than, say, your other ones here. Let's see if I can show you. So you can see, so this one here is a body screw or a top body screw, and then these are the cap screws. So it might be very, very hard to tell, but this is a much thicker one there, and then that's a smaller one. So the smaller ones are what hold on the cap right here. And again, I'm putting these all in by just doing this by hand because it's plastic, and it does not take much to strip them. So it's very, very easy to do. So make sure you're careful, and just if you've got your Allen on the tool, it's okay. Just they don't need to be very tight. So that holds in the top shell there. Now we got our top shell in, ready to rock. All right, and then our gimbal is replaced. So we will put our battery in and we'll test it. And let's see what we got. Now I did a full gimbal replacement. So that's what I did. Into the gimbal cycling. Levels out. Just work like a charm. There she goes. So very, very simple to do. Repair, especially when it's the whole gimbal. I got this one working great. So I'm Luke from Covert Drones. I'm going to start doing a lot more of these repair videos. Hopefully they can help you out. If you can't or you don't feel like comfortable doing it yourself, this is what I do on a daily basis. It's my full-time job. I hook you guys up with antennas, and I also do the DJI drone repairs. I do a lot of other ones. I built racing drones. I mean, I do all drones, so don't just think that it's just DJI. Thanks for watching. Again, you can see it works great. Here's the junk one that I replaced. This one started smoking, so this one's no good. Thanks for watching your stuff. So especially when working with the board and stuff down here, you can really, really mess up some stuff. Again, up here is a compass. Up down here is the GPS connection right there. Compass, GPS, and then your Wi-Fi board back there. So always make sure that you got the proper equipment doing this stuff. Because otherwise you can really, really mess stuff up. This customer lives in New Mexico. So you can see all the dust and stuff that really got inside there. This can really, really wreak havoc on stuff. It's not very good. So, all right. So then next, what we're going to do is we are going to put the shell back together. And so inside the shell, this is where the GPS sits, right here. Tell that cord there. So you always got to make sure that you plug this in first, or you will have GPS errors. I know it's very, very hard to see, but there's two little tabs on there, and you really got to make sure that what you're doing, you line this stuff up, because it is possible to plug this connector in backwards, and you will ruin these pins. So I don't know if you can see that or not. It goes right in there. So that's the back GPS. And when you're taking this shell off too, the top shell, you really, really got to make sure that you undo that. When it's down like this, you can pull it up a little bit, and then you can just see inside there and pop it up with a screwdriver. So just to make sure that it doesn't get ripped out. I've seen plenty of people do it. they rip out the whole connector on the board. That's part of the main board, and then you can guess as to what happens after that. You can't really buy connectors from DJI. They don't sell it like that. So unless you've got some salvage parts or something like that, it's not a very, very good thing. So always make sure that take precautions doing that. This is probably not the best repair video you've ever seen before, but just trying to document some stuff here on how to do this stuff. The gimbal replacement is not very hard to do. So now I'm just securing in all of the body screws. This is going to hold on the top shell here. Now when I took these off, some of them will have a clear glue-like substance on them. And what that is it's DJI's way to tell if you've been messing around with your drone. And what it'll be, it'll feel like you can't get a good screw started. And what they do is they put glue right inside the head so your tool won't fit inside of there like that to turn it. So it's very, very easy to take a little X-Acto blade and just kind of pop it out. Just a little drop of something. But that can mess some people up and make you think that the screws are stripped out. I always put them in by hand, just like this. There's no need to really crank on them or anything like that. They just don't need it. They don't need a tool to crank them down. So there are going to be two smaller screws, and so that's what just happened here. They will look the same, but they're not, and I'll show you where that goes. So that one was the wrong one there. The top screws are all going to be this thicker body screw, and if you have it in your hand, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'll tell you where those other ones go. So there's 4 inside the battery compartment, and then 2 on the back side here. Right there. Okay. And one more to go. Right. Almost done here. There we go. All right. Okay, so 2, 2, 2. So total of 6 on top. Then you want to flip over the drone, and then there's going to be 2, 4, and then 6. So I'll show you where the outer 2 go. So we'll get these in here first. And this one goes here like this. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. And so that holds down the top shell as well. And those are kind of tricky. So make sure when you're taking the shell off that you're really paying attention to where the screws are, because if you just try and pop it off, it's not going to end up very well. I've seen many customers do that. They just rip the holes out, and then it's a lot more work. So definitely just take your time. That's my biggest thing that I could tell everybody, is just take your time, because I see a lot who don't. And then there's 2 in here, there and right there. All right, so 2, 4. All right, then these caps here